Hey, welcome back. So yesterday, you, I hope, tasted and learned and experienced what it was like to begin to open up porosity in another individual. And hopefully that was a very positive experience for you, similar to having baked a little bit in the gratitude of the day before. Today, we're going to focus on something equally as important. And in fact, I do hope this makes you a little bit uncomfortable. We're going to be focusing on audacity, being bold, and why it matters so much. I do understand that there are cultural differences. I've worked all over the world in different cultures with different organizations and different people, and I respect that. But I can tell you that if you don't push, if you're not bold, if you're not stepping out, if you are too deferential and you stand in the corners, you will not have the success that you deserve. You must be bold. I had quoted before that what my dad always used to say to me, and I'll keep reinforcing it. Hey, don't ever be afraid to ask. The worst anybody could ever say is no. That in and of itself, not asking, so holds us back. It truly does. Let me give you a couple of stories in my own life where this really made a big difference. Remember I told you my father got me into that small private elementary school in 5th grade? Until then, all of my family, friends, and everybody I knew, we were all just construction workers, ditch diggers, manual labor, 100%. I met a student. His name was George. And George's father was also named George. Only rich people name their kids after themselves. His father, George, was a lawyer. And I kind of, for whatever reason, I was really gravitating at that time thinking that might be interesting to be a lawyer. So at recess, I asked my friend George whether it would be possible to talk to his dad when his dad came to pick him up at the bus stop, because we shared the bus stop. I walked over with George to meet his dad, and I asked his father, I said, Mr. Love, his name was George Love. I said, Mr. Love, is it possible sometime to talk to you about what it's like to be a lawyer? And with that, he was beaming. He was so excited. And he invited me and my parents to come up for lunch. Now, this is the first time I'd ever really even been inside of a rich person's home. And it was this beautiful home. I was so excited. And I sat there in the den as Mr. Love talked to me about law. He showed me his books. He told me what he studied. There was an entire opening to me that college was even a possibility. Remember, I was in 5th grade at this time. I didn't even begun to think about college as a possibility, as nobody around me had even gone to college. And it was all because of audacity, the willingness to step forward and ask something like, can I speak to your father? I'll give you another example. This is a big one. This is probably one of the most audacious high-return activities that I've ever done in my entire life. Here I was, a first-year intern working for Deloitte. And there was a summer internship program where all of the interns got to meet the executives in a really big event. We're talking about hundreds of interns and a few executives standing around. And there was a gentleman over there, and his name was Pat LeConto, and he was the CEO of the company. How many times do we have an opportunity to have a small meeting with somebody, even just a passing discussion with somebody, even standing in a circle with somebody who's incredibly powerful, incredibly important, and how often do we ever turn that into something powerful? Now look, I knew that I could probably not make the kind of an impact on Mr. LeConto that would make him remember me for the rest of his life, but I could maybe gather a little bit of information. I went up to Mr. LeConto at that point, and I said to Pat, I said, Mr. LeConto, as you think about your legacy in this world, as you think about your legacy once you leave Deloitte, sir, what do you want your legacy to be at Deloitte? What kind of an imprint do you want to have made on Deloitte? What do you want Deloitte to be after you've left? He looked at me because I don't think anybody had asked him that question. He paused and he said, Keith, I'll tell you, I would like to have someday Deloitte be equal, at par, to the greatest consultancies in the world, like McKinsey and Accenture. At the time it was called Anderson Consulting. I said, thank you, sir. I know that we're going to get there. Now, what I did, though, with that piece of information is afterward, I went and did a bunch of research. I went and did a bunch of research for Pat on what it meant to do marketing for a large consultancy. I studied articles that the head of marketing at McKinsey had written. I studied articles about Accenture's marketing. I even utilized, when I went back to school, I utilized the courses I was taking to do additional research in services marketing. And when I did more of that work, I wrote it up and I sent it to Pat LeConto. Now, he was blown away. He was absolutely blown away. And as a result, when it was time for me to decide between the various offers that I had, it was Mr. LeConto that reached out to me when I was at business school. He called me. He said, Keith, I've been receiving information from you since the day I met you. Nobody has ever done that to me. As a result of that information that I've been receiving, I have to tell you, there's a lot of good insights there. I would very much like you to come down to New York City, and I want to have dinner with you. This is the CEO of the company inviting me to dinner. So I go down, and I'm sitting at dinner with Pat LeConto. Remember, at this stage, I had had an offer from Deloitte because I had come out of my summer internship with an offer, but I'd also had some other opportunities to work for other firms, some of which were those prestigious firms that he wanted to someday be like. And I'm thinking, well, maybe I should go with a bigger firm. And he's sitting there with me, and Pat LeConto looks at me and goes, Keith, we want you in this firm. These other firms, they don't even know who you are. We know who you are. And by the way, remember, why does he know who I was? Because I had had the audacity to ask that question and follow up with the generosity of doing all of that research and sending that to him, right? So here I'm sitting there and he's asking me to come and join the firm. And I said, sir, I will absolutely come and join the firm under one condition, that for the remainder of the time that I'm at this firm, you, sir, will you please give me 1 or 2 dinners a year, just like this, where I can get to know you better and I can understand where the firm, and I can figure out how to serve you better. Remember, intimacy is so important to be generated so that I can learn how to serve you better, because intimacy and generosity work together hand in hand. The more you learn about somebody, the more you can serve them. So I asked for those dinners and he said yes. He said yes. And that was absolutely the tipping point in my career, because I was able to get to know Pat, and I was able to find out more and more information about where marketing was going, and I was able to do more and more work. This wasn't my job, by the way. It had nothing to do with my job. All of this had to do with nothing more than my proactivity, my audacity. And with that audacity, I was more generous, and I deepened the relationship even more and more with that individual. And as a result, I became the youngest chief marketing officer ever at Deloitte. I was appointed partner at the time before anybody else had, and this set my career fundamentally forward because of that audacity and following with intimacy and generosity in significant ways. Now, that might sound contradictory to you, right? But it's not, because early on we talked about generosity, but I was now being audacious in earning the permission to be generous. I was asking, and I want you to ask. I want you to think about the ways in which you can be more audacious today. And I want to press you to really step up and do something audacious today. And that's where we're going to be moving forward. I want you to be thinking about the risks that you can take and how you can push yourself to be more, take more, receive more, and give more. All of those things combined. Now, let me try to get into your head for a second. Some of you might be asking, well, wait a second. Like, where's the line? Like, you know, particularly if you're an introvert, or particularly if you've never done this kind of thing before, where is the line? And when am I going to cross the line by being too audacious, too bold, maybe too much asking or leaning on another person? And let me assure you, you are so far away from that line today. You know, if you're worried about falling off the cliff, you're probably 3 miles away from falling off that cliff. I'm asking you to take 10 steps forward. 10 steps forward. How can you just do small, audacious things right now so that you can become more comfortable, right? The reason I wanted you to practice intimacy and generosity before is I wanted you to get more comfortable with that being a part of your habit and ritual. And now audacity. I want audacity to become comfortable for you. So let's talk about what our mission is today. I want you to be audacious. So let's talk about the various ways in which you could be audacious. If you want to be audacious in career opportunities, like I was with Pat LeConto, pick somebody who has a career that you admire, somebody that may be in your organization or outside of your organization, and maybe just reach out to them and tell them that you admire them. Send them an email, right? How about this? Ask for a coffee or a lunch, right? Be bold and ask whether it's possible. Say how much you admire them, and ask if it's possible to sit down with a coffee or a lunch. Now, when you do, come prepared with questions. I want you to come prepared, right? I want you to come prepared. Ask for all the questions that you have from this individual. You're pedestalizing this person and you're saying how much you admire and respect them. Come with great, smart questions and ask them for homework. What things would they say you should do when you leave that meeting that they think is good advice for you, right? And as soon as you leave, I want you to immediately follow up. And there's a wonderful saying, follow up or fail. Make sure you follow up. Follow up with gratitude that they took the meeting, and then follow up then telling them that you're going to do the action that they suggested. And simply just send an email, and maybe that gives you the permission to come back again and do the same thing, right? Or we can make this simple. Just simply send an email to somebody saying that you respect them and you admire them. Maybe that to you is bold and audacious. Whatever is bold and audacious to you, I want you to push yourself to be there. Now, what if you want to increase sales? Maybe that's the area that you're going to apply your audacity to. How about ask a current client or a prospect what they're interested in learning more about? One of the things that if you're in a position to sell something to somebody, you're also in a position to have spoken to a lot of people that look or have similar roles to whoever that person is. Why don't you ask somebody if there's anything that they would like you to research by talking to their peers about? So if I'm, for instance, a financial advisor and I'm talking to a lot of rich people, you might ask them, hey, what questions do you have that you would ask other people in your position so that I can go and ask them and I'll bring that information for you. The idea is that you're providing an act of bold generosity that somebody didn't expect for them. So do some research for them, report back what you discovered. That's generous, but it's also bold. Maybe bold for you is connecting with an influencer on social media, right? Let's say that you're a yoga teacher or a coach or an instructor or something, and you have classes where people are showing up to those classes. And you would like to maybe get to know somebody who comes to your classes. They're a local influencer, but they just come and go right now from your classes. Why don't you stop them at the end of class someday and ask them, tell them that you admire their work outside of what that class is, outside of yoga, etc. Tell them you admire their work. You'd love to give them just as a compliment for their work and your admiration. You'd love to give them a free course that they're already paying for. You'd like to give them a free course, so you're leading with generosity. And maybe ask them if at some point they would be willing to be interviewed by you for a quick video blog or something around a topic that you think they particularly know something about, right? All I'm asking you to do again is trying to step forward and be bold and take some audacious step. And maybe this is just social. Maybe this is just somebody that you would like to have in your sphere of influence, somebody that you have respected and admired. And just listen, it's as simple as that. Reach out to somebody who's interesting to you. Research their hobbies, their passions, the stuff they've done, and maybe reach out to them and say, hey, listen, there's this really cool event that I've seen that's happening. Would you like to go with me and a friend? I mean, if somebody reached out to me and did a little bit of research, they know my interest in spirituality, and they were to say, there's a real interest in weekend conferences, or there's a really interesting talk. Keith, would you like to go with me and a couple of friends to this really interesting thing that they already know that I'm interested in? Look, the only point that I'm trying to make here is on this mission, on this day, I want you to amp it up. I want you to be audacious. I want you to be bold. I want you to push yourself a little bit harder, a little bit further. That's your mission today. Go out and do it. Be bold, be audacious. See you tomorrow.